Having an exceptional relationship with your spouse affects every single aspect of your life and is crucial for experiencing your dream life together. I'm Rob Murgatroyd.
And I'm Kim Murgatroyd. Listen in on our honest, filter-free conversations as we navigate life and business together without killing each other.
You'll learn by osmosis how to transform the friction you feel in your relationship into a purposeful foundation that will allow you to grow together.
Welcome to the Friday Podcast.
Kimberly Misophonia Murgatroyd, how are you this morning?
You know, I have a question. What's the other one where people like weird sounds? Is it AMR or something? What's it called?
ASMR? ASMR? Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So our daughter has that.
Where she likes it or does or performs it?
No, she likes it. The other day she unwrapped something and she just wanted to crinkle the wrapper and she's like, this is so satisfying. I was like, this is my nightmare. Like, it's actually my nightmare. Yesterday I was on a Zoom with somebody who kept drinking water. I was losing my shiitake. It was just like nonstop gulping.
For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about and you're new to the Kimberly Murgatroyd's misophonia worlds, what that means is misophonia is people who hear other people drinking, I think, and or eating, and it makes them want to vomit. They're like, I can't stand it. But Are you about
to do it right now for me?
I'm not. ASMR is...
It's like liking weird... I don't know what it is.
They'll go on the microphone. They'll go like this.
Oh, you see how... No. I can't. Oh, God. No, and those noises are the worst for me. But I noticed our little one enjoys these noises, and it's very peculiar to me.
This is not why we are here today. We are here to talk to you. You know, you ever see when people do these posts and they're like, hey, if you're new here, they sort of like recap who they are and what they do. And yesterday we were, well, you know this because you're there, but they don't know this because they're not there. But every morning we do a coffee morning, Monday through Thursday. And we spend an hour trying not to kill each other over whatever project we're working on and coming up with ideas. And so a lot of you I know are working on different projects, ideas. You want to change your situation. Perhaps you listen to my other podcast, which is called Next Chapter, and you're trying to make a next chapter for yourself. And so, there's an evolution that we all go through of different changes that we want to make in our lives. And so I was sitting with Kim yesterday and I was like, in some ways I feel like I'm all over the map with all these different things. And I'm trying to like put this, these pieces of the story together as I'm writing a book and as we're creating different products and stuff. And she really, really helped me put some things together. And as I was reading those notes from her, I was like, okay, this is all starting to make sense to me. And since today is Friday, I thought it would be a good idea to share that story with you, especially if you're new here or even if you've been here for a while, because I think it will add context and perhaps you can see yourself in different points of the story.
Well, we were having this conversation about, Rob, so he's got a book he's writing, he's got his coaching, we're launching a group coaching together. We haven't done that in a long time. We have this Italia thing, and it's like you feel like we feel like at times that we're doing things that are all over the place. A vision board course, this. And we know somehow they're all tied together, and we just had to kind of flesh that out. And the book that he's writing, called I Like You Better in Italy, is based on, a conversation that we had, and he's going to go through that. But what is interesting, I think, for the listener, because I know that there are new listeners. I see your comments. You guys reach out and you're like, I just found your podcast. Like, we didn't come out of the womb and start doing a podcast. We've had many lives before. And, going all the way back to when Rob was a chiropractor and I was working in the clinic with him. Listen, he didn't hire me. We already figured out who did the bad thing on this podcast. He didn't hire me and then start dating me. We were already dating, and I came in to help him in the clinic because we knew we'd get married, and it was going to be kind of a family business, so to speak. But from the days of us both working there to where we are now is a massive transformation. And so, I always say we're working 12-hour days in a physical business, driving, 30, 45 minutes together to and from, to now completely virtual business living in Italy. It sounds like a massive leap in between, but there were so many steps and so many things along the way. It wasn't an overnight success. It wasn't something we did in 6 months. It was a process. And there's so many nuances that are part of creating your next chapter that I think it's important for people to see the full story and not just the last week I was working 9 to 5 and today I'm a millionaire and virtually traveling around the world, because that's a bullshit story. And we want to show you all of it.
Yeah, I think a good place to start would be to go back, and I'll be as brief as I can, but there's like 6 or 7 points that are milestones or on this trajectory. And the first is I had, like Kim mentioned, I was a chiropractor for 25 years. And prior to me going to college, I had a girlfriend when I was probably 14, 15 years old.
No, you didn't.
I did.
You had someone before me?
I did.
What?
And what's interesting about this is I come from Queens, and, my dad was a truck driver.
Like royalty?
No, I wish. My dad was a truck driver, and he was an alcoholic, and I was abused, and it wasn't a great time in my life. And so this girl I dated had a wonderful father who did he did like sound engineering for conventions. And he said, hey, I've got a convention for Mobil Oil in Beverly Hills. Do you want to come? So you can imagine being like being a kid and getting an opportunity to go to Beverly Hills. So I went there, and I remember being with him, and one day we're sitting at the end of the event, we're sitting on Rodeo Drive, and we just had dinner at La Scala, and I sat next to Dean Martin. That's how old I am. And it was just like an out-of-body experience. And I remember sitting there at the traffic lights, and he was like, every one of these traffic lights are going to catch a very, very expensive car. And it was like a Porsche and a Ferrari and a Mercedes. And we just sat there and watched one after the other. And that went deep for me. And that is what was pointed to in my mind as what success was. Now, perhaps that was his idea of success, but it definitely became implanted in my mind. So fast forward, go to college, go to chiropractic school, work as a chiropractor. And I find myself going from not New York, not Beverly Hills, but working and living in Beaufort, Georgia. And for me, that was like, how the fuck did I wind up here? And I spent 25 years California dreaming, just always wanting to get there. And, I was just about to say resentful. And
because that's what, like, when you get to California, that's when you'll be happy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point in this story, is that, number one, you created a dream based on someone else's dream, right?
Yeah.
On Ronnie's father. And two, you literally used California as your North Star and as your, when I achieve this, then I will be happy. I will be successful. I will know that I've made it.
So that was a really, really big deal for me. And all I wanted to do whenever I felt trapped or pissed off that I was in Beaufort, Georgia, or that I was, unhappy with my career, I would just California dream. I can remember just sitting there and like writing out a vision of what it's going to be like when I get to California. I'm going to be surfing. It's going to be like a Sunkist commercial, right? I had this vision, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And through a series of events, we decide that that's going to happen. And we sell the practice, and we move out to California. And I'm like, I did it. This is great. 70 degrees, sunny, surfing, etc. And right after I got there, I started to immediately feel the pressure of keeping up with the Kardashians. I needed like a bigger house, a nicer car, more money in the bank. And I was like, all right, well, I did it. This is different because I was in Beaufort, Georgia, and I lived in Buckhead, but it was still not LA. And I was like, okay, well, I got a nice house here. It's $1 million house, but it's not,
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here real quick. So he came to California, rang the bell, right? I did it. I'm here. Well, we had spent 4 months in Europe, most of it in Florence, because that was my dream. And I was like, before we get to LA, before we move, if we could he had 2 events, 2 of his Work Hard, Play Hard events in Europe, one in June, one in October. I said, if we could just stay in Europe between those 2 events, then I can live out one of my dreams, which was to spend extended time or quasi live in Florence, Italy. And so we did that. When I tell you that the movers came and unloaded it, and literally the first thing out of Rob's mouth was, let's go buy bicycles. I mean, I hadn't unpacked a fork yet. And he was like, let's go get bicycles. He had created this sun-kissed commercial, riding bikes down the beach boulevard and surfing and whatever. And he was going to make it happen now. And we immediately bought bikes. The next day, he was calling the surfboard place. He was going to live this dream. What I thought was going to happen, or what he had said was he would be happy if he just got there. He didn't care where he lived. He didn't care about any of it. He wanted the lifestyle. But then we got there, and although he did want the lifestyle, the bikes and the surfing and all of that, all of a sudden everything else became not enough. And the house wasn't big enough. The house wasn't close enough to the beach. We couldn't see the water. Why am I here if I can't even see the water? God forbid he walk 15 steps, down the hill and see the water, or jump on that bike that you just bought and go see it, but he can't see it from where he's eating dinner. So I need more. And why we have a paid off Prius in the driveway. We can't have that. I want to get a Tesla. Why do you want to get a Tesla? Where would we even charge a Tesla? What, like all the things with that? Yeah, but I want it. I also want a Jeep. Oh, and by the way, I want a golf cart because it's golf cart culture in this area of the South Bay of LA. And you have to have a golf cart to drive around. And I'm like, well, why do you need a golf cart if you have a bike and you can walk? Because it completes the package, right? And so there was this never-ending list of not enough. And from my perspective, what I witnessed was a guy who was not happy with his life in Atlanta, loved his family, but not happy with his career, not happy with, his surroundings, all of that. Moves to California, loves the beach, loves the bicycle, loves all of that, but not happy now again with the house and how far he is and where he is and all of that. And so unfortunately, when you move, you take yourself with you. And whatever problems you have are going to follow you. And the external isn't going to solve those. So I just wanted to add a little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And so all of those things that you were talking about, wanting the Tesla and wanting the view of the ocean, et cetera, all of those things really, instead of being joyful for where I was, I wanted more. And so the idea is, well, when does that end? Or even more than that, how do you pay for it all? And
well, it's both. It's when does it end and how do you pay for it all? Because if it never ends, you're constantly needing more money, more money, more money, more stuff, more stuff, more stuff, thinking all the while that when you get it, you will be happy, but you know that you're just going to need to go even bigger and consistently 3x.
Yeah. And so what that did was I went the other option, and I went down the option of, okay, well, I'm going to figure out how to pay for it. And so to do that, I amplified everything. And I went from being unhappy with my career to digging in to generate more income. And that pressure of generating more income and creating and the desire, not the desire, but the pressure that I put on myself to generate the income to live the life I wanted to live created me going into back-to-back Zooms and feeling just like I needed to produce income. And there was a turning point where I had, a minute and a half in between Zooms, and I walked out of my office, had like a microsecond to slam a shake, and I could see Kim looking back at me. Like, have you ever had like one of those moments where you're so behind that you're rushing is actually making you more behind because you're knocking into things, and like, instead of like calmly going into the kitchen and making a shake, you're like opening the cabinet, knocking the shake bottle down, grabbing the blender and
Dumping
knocking it over.
powder.
The powder's all over. Like, you're literally making it 10 times worse because you're stressed out. Well, that's kind of like the state I was in that moment. And, Kim looked over at me and she's like, you know what? I like you better in Italy. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but I think I know what it means, but I don't even have any time to think about it. And I went back.
You're like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, because the way I looked at it
because I'm here and I'm producing and I have a roof over your head and all of those things, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm trying to provide for the family. And after a couple of weeks, I started to realize that what was happening was, in this effort to generate the income that I felt that I needed to live the lifestyle that I said that I needed, work started to encroach on my life. And that was affecting my relationship with my wife. It was affecting my relationship with my daughter. And all of the other areas of my life really, really started to be affected by work encroaching on these areas. And I didn't let it get too far out of hand because I'm old enough. I was old enough and I understood what she was saying. And I quickly moved into contemplative reflection with her about, asking bigger questions like, okay, well, if I didn't do this, what could we do? Or how do I not let my life encroach on this? And then that really moved us into the conversation of, well, what do we really want? Like, what's important to us in life? And having spent 3 months in Florence and being able to draw as a reference for what it feels like to have a great life, one that was more soul-filling, moved into the conversation of, well, do I really need all this shit? Like, do I really need to move closer to the beach? Do I really need this golf cart? Do I really need to see the ocean from the house? Do I really need the Tesla? And it's not that that there's anything wrong with any of those things. It's that there's a price that you have to pay to generate the income to afford those things.
And it wasn't your desire. It was the pressure you felt from keeping up with your neighbors, keeping up with your friends, keeping up with all the people. It's not that, listen, if you want an oceanfront house, like, I get it. It's beautiful. It's not that. It was for you. You were marking your success by what you accumulated and your growth. So much so that when you went out with your friends for dinner and everybody was talking about their goals for the next year and you randomly threw out $2 million, it's because that's what you thought you needed to get that house, get that car, get that golf cart, do all the things. And these are things that weren't really you, it wasn't really lighting you up. And the Sunkist commercial, you had that. You were bicycling down the beach, you were surfing, you were doing all of it, but you weren't as fulfilled as you thought you would have been. It's not that you didn't enjoy those things, because you thoroughly enjoyed all of that, but it wasn't what you made it out to be when you were in the chiropractic office. You created this Disney fantasy of what it would be like to live in California and ring the bell of success. And that wasn't it, because the house wasn't good enough. The car wasn't good enough. And that was going to be a never ending cycle of more and more and more. And so what I meant, obviously, when I said I like you better in Italy, is that I talk about this a lot. You were like a chicken running around with your head cut off in California. You were so overscheduled that we haven't even talked about this because we thought that COVID and the lockdown was creating the panic attacks. But I have to tell you, reliving this story, if you don't think that your schedule had something to do with the panic attacks you were having at the time and all of that, I think that is definitely playing a role in, because you were trapping yourself in the second set of golden handcuffs, right? Life wasn't that bad, but you were grinding it out to make it happen to the point of which you couldn't sleep and you're having panic attacks at night. The energy and effort that you had to go into two parts of your life, right? The business, the accumulation of more, and the Sunkist commercial, and everything else was put on the back burner. And then us unwinding that and talking about what do we really want our life to look like? Because at the core of it, even though that was a tough time in our relationship, you and I have such a good foundation from all the work that we've done that we're able to have these conversations and influence each other. And so we unpacking what I Like You Better in Italy meant and figuring out what the influences around you, what we value, what we want for our lives, what we want for our daughter's life was so important. And I think people try to rush that conversation. Like, okay, today we're going to figure out what we want. I think it took us 8 months to get to that point, right? Of sitting on the couch and seeing Stanley Tucci talk about living in Florence and then pulling the trigger for us to actually move here.
With all of those conversations around it, thinking about what we wanted, it got us really clear. And so we're like, okay, well, what do we really want? And then that set us off on really doing two things. One is to create a vision of what that looked like. And that vision for us, after having been here for 3 months, was a vision around living in Florence. And then that vision then was tied to, okay, well, now that we have this vision, how much does that vision actually cost? And so when we added up how much that vision costs, what we didn't realize is that it's very, very different here in Italy in terms of expenses. I've gotten very used to going out to dinner and having, 5-star quality food for $60, $70, and you get like 1-star quality Mexican for $200
in America.
Where we were living anyway.
Yeah.
We were in Hermosa Beach.
It was super expensive.
It was crazy expensive. And so everything here becomes just a lot less expensive. So the dream was even less than we thought. And so it was a gamble. Like, we had been here for 90 days. So we're like, okay, we think this is going to be good. And it was a risk, we sold everything because it made no logical sense whatsoever to take everything that we had and bring it because the cost was too expensive.
But I want to talk about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to talk about that because I think that's a really interesting piece of this puzzle. So initially when we were going to move here, Rob was we were going to get a big 20-foot shipping container that goes on, a boat, and we were going to put the car in it, and we were going to put the Peloton and the DJ equipment and everything, the bike. He wanted to bring the bike from California. And he wanted to bring everything, right? Everything we have, our furniture, all the stuff. And because of COVID, we couldn't do it. It was going to be like a year before we got our stuff. And so none of that worked out. And we went through a process of slowly stripping off all of the things, all of the physical things that we had purchased. And that was an emotional process, but I think it was a really interesting process subconsciously and mentally, because what you were literally doing was going into this life where it was all about acquiring more. And then by the time we moved to Italy, our life fit in 10 duffel bags. And that peeling off of, I feel like in some ways you peeled off that ego with all of this stuff. Like as the guy rode away on your bike, as you handed your surfboard over to your surf instructor, like there was an element of that was so, I don't know what the word is, but it wasn't just a transaction. It was growth. It was you seeing your entire life go down to literally 10 duffel bags that we shipped here.
Well, it was the opposite of where my head was. My head was on more, but what was happening was I was getting less, and so, but there was there's a freeing, there was a burning of the bra, right?
Yeah.
There was a okay, I'm free now to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And I felt like Plato, am I my things? You know what I mean? Was I all of these trappings? Was I all of these things? And I don't want to get, what do they call those? Like Hare Krishna, where I sold everything, shaved my head, and, I'm walking around with a tambourine around the city singing, Hare Krishna.
Although I do love those people.
Although I do love them. They have a nice ponytail, right?
And
in
a
the
nice
back.
energy.
But I have to say, there was a freeing feeling that came with not having anything, like any of those attachments. It was really, really cool. And then, the last piece of it was started to say the dream life budget. And that was, how do you pay for this thing? And so we got really clear on what that looked like. And then looking at the vision of what we wanted and calculating how much it costs, we were able to put two and two together, and we're like, I think we can do this. And by the way, if any of this is resonating for you, and you're feeling like there's elements of this that you either want to do for yourself, or that you want to figure out your vision, or you want your dream life budget, I would strongly recommend becoming a part of our Patreon community, because we've got our actual dream life budget spreadsheet that is inside of the community that you get when you join. And a lot of people in there, not everybody wants to sell all their shit and move to Italy like we did, but a lot of people in there just want different things. So, once a month we jump on a Zoom and we talk about those things. And so I think it would be, super valuable to you. So we wanted to share that story because I thought it was something that you perhaps could see yourself in any one of those things.
Well, all of this led to today, where now, see, here's the beautiful thing about growth, right? You go through these things. You go through being miserable as a chiropractor, to dreaming about California, to getting to California and realizing that it wasn't that was ever going to make you happy. It was the other things in life, right? It wasn't the external California. It's your family and your friends and your community and living a full, enriched life that's truly going to make you happy. And so when you look back on the story like this, what came out of this story is what you talk about now all the time, and what you're helping people, which is realizing when enough is enough, right? When your work and your obligations begin to encroach on the things that are important to you, that's when you say basta. That's when you say it's enough. And you wouldn't have gotten to that point of having that, let's call it a tagline, right? Or a theory, or hypothesis, whatever you want to call it. You wouldn't have gotten there and be able to help people, because there's so many people that feel trapped by either the pressure to keep up with others, the pressure to, go after, there was no way, even if you wanted to not go to California because you had dreamed about it for so long, you had to fulfill that.
I think there was karma there.
There's karma there. So there are people that feel so trapped in where they are, and that, I hate using this word, but need the permission to say enough is enough and I want something different. And it doesn't have to be when your kids move out, and it doesn't have to be when you retire. You can make that decision today and say, you know what, I'm reworking my life and I'm going to start over from scratch and figure it out. And I think you would never have gotten to this point to be able to help this many people without going through all of this.
Yeah, for sure. And, when you think about whenever you are going to make a change with something, the change generally comes when you've made the decision to make a change. And those decisions generally come in a way that is a surprise, because that's how your brain learns. It learns by surprises because they're meaningful. So when you walked in the room and you said to me, I like you better in Italy, that was a shock to the nervous system. That was a surprise. That meant something to me, because I value you. I value your opinion. I value our life together. I think if somebody were to say to me, well, do you think you're working too hard? Or do you think that you're, living somebody else's California dream? Or do you think you're trying to keep up with the Joneses? It wouldn't have been as impactful as you saying to me, I like you better in Italy, because I had a reference for what that meant. I cared about you. So I think everybody's circumstances are, unique to them. But that was definitely the path that we had to go down together. And you and I, as a couple, had a lot of this was my awareness, but, there was also other things entwined into this, which was, your desire to live a simpler life and one with meaning that you had reference to. So you were able to say to me, I like you better in Italy, because you understood that it was better there for both of us. And so you had a frame of reference. So, it's interesting as a couple to be able to intertwine these paths that we're both on in a way, like only the universe can put this together in a way that makes sense and that you can grow. I mean, like the more I'm thinking about this, the more simple and complicated this all was at the same time to come together to this moment of where we are now to be able to share this.
So question, do you like you more in Italy?
I like me so much in Italy that I need to actually work. So it's become a different challenge. So if you are somebody that is interested in Italy yourself and you want to see what the magic of this place does, then click one of the links in our show notes to get some information on our next event. We have a spring one. We have a fall one. The next one is in the fall. And then after that, we'll be doing the spring one as well. So you'll get all the details you need by clicking the link. That's it, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody, if you've ever thought about coming to hang out with Kim and I on one of our next Rob and Kim Italia events and you want to learn more, just click the Rob and Kim Italia link in the show notes and add your name and email, and we'll send you all the details as soon as they're available. We are obsessed with this country and how it affects you, and we want to share that magic of culture, food, wine, art, architecture, and some secret magic moments that we've cooked up with you. So be sure to add your name because these events sell out quickly.